Welcome to the Authorpreneur podcast, where we talk to authors and business owners about how they are using books to market themselves and their businesses. I'm your host, Chris Green, and in each episode of the Authorpreneur podcast, we talk to a successful author and business owner to see exactly how they are using their books and author status to grow their businesses and serve their customers. We'll talk about what's working, the benefits of becoming a published author, and we may even come up with some creative new marketing strategies. In this episode of the Authorpreneur podcast, I talk with Adam Hergenrother, author of The 200% Life, Your Guide to Spiritual Growth and Business Success Without Meditating on a Mountaintop. Founder, CEO, author, father, spiritual seeker, and an entrepreneur at heart, Adam is the founder and CEO of Adam Hergenrother Companies, AHC, which includes Livian, BlackRock Construction, Project U, KW Vermont, Keller Williams Premier Properties, and the Hergenrother Foundation. Adam is also the author of the Founder and the Force Multiplier and the host of the Business Meets Spirituality podcast. He is passionate about using business to transform lives and believes that when you focus on growing and leading yourself first, the business results will follow always. Adam has built his thriving organization in less than 10 years through his commitment to personal growth through business success. AHC is a powerhouse connector, matching talent with opportunities, the community with resources, clients with realtors, investors with projects, and goals with high-impact content and training. Through models, systems, culture, training, and community, AHC empowers the leaders of today to develop the leaders of tomorrow. When he's not growing his organizations, you can find Adam in the Vermont mountains with his wife and 3 children. I really think you're going to enjoy this episode. We'll start off your podcast with talking about Nick's book.
Right.
It's the perfect complementary book for every book, right? So if someone picks up your book, The 200% Life, they're like, man, is there any book that can help me get the most out of this? Help me implement what I read? I'm like, yes, there is. It's called Rise the Reader.
Yeah, it's a great angle too.
Yeah, I'm so glad he wrote it. And I know, for most people, they think, oh, should I write this? Or does anybody want to get anything out of this? And I'm sure Nick, in a sense, wrote it for himself. Look, I'm just going to write it because I think I would find it useful. And then to have other people like it's similar or is such kind of a positive reinforcement. And I watched a podcast where you said you kind of did the same thing. You wrote your book for you, and if other people like it, that's great.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that intentional part. Where are you at where you're like, you know what, I'm going to write a book? Because most people don't ever write books, right?
Yeah.
That is kind of a monumental task. And then you say, I'm going to write a book. It's just for me. Maybe no one will even read it, but I'm still going to take on this potentially daunting task.
Yeah. Well, thanks. For me, it actually started, the companies that I started building just became training grounds for me to help people grow and to help myself grow. I've always used this phrase of business is nothing but a conduit for our personal growth. And it's one that I've, personal growth, spiritual growth, whatever growth you want to refer to it as, you growing as a human. So it's not about necessarily what you accomplish, though that's important. It's more about who you become during the process of life in general. And for me, we started teaching these kind of core concepts to our organizations and just getting it out there. And I would, for early in my career, I would say probably 10, 11, 12 years ago now, actually it's like 2011, 2014, I spoke a lot. I was probably 2 or 3 times a month. I was speaking to an audience somewhere in the country or in Canada. And so I kind of went on this circuit, and I realized that it was great, but the same people kept showing up, and they didn't really change their lives. Honestly, it was more of they loved what they were hearing, and this was great, but nothing really changed. So then I ended up developing this course called Project U, which was a full year-long immersion course. And at that same time, as our organization started growing, we have over 1,000 people in our organization. So what I basically started to do was to draft this book as a way for people to use as a guide to help them grow. And then we could talk about the concepts along with the mechanical nature of building a business, hiring, firing, accountability, making sure that you eliminate different things that are important. So that's really kind of where the book came from, was also 2 things. One is to memorialize kind of where I was in my own journey. I think that's important to do for anybody. And so that you kind of can reflect back on where you were, where you are, the words you used, how you thought about things, and then also use it as a conduit for people in our organization to be able to utilize and to help grow and attract the right people to our organization I don't really like cold calling for recruiting. I'm much more of a tractor into it. So if you put messages out there and of who you are, some people are going to hate it and some people are going to like it. And I think for any organization, being able to be very clear on who you are to attract the people that want to be part of what you're doing allows for a much longer longevity for the employees that are with your organization. So we kind of use that book as a way of here's the other thing we are. I don't know if you're aware of this. I also wrote another book called The Founder The Force Multiplier.
I am.
Yep. And that was a really fun book to write with my chief of staff, my former chief of staff, Hallie, as a way of memorializing our partnership. And now that's kind of grown legs on its own. And people are using that as like, before you become an EA, read the book. And it was all written based on, because people kept asking how we had a relationship. And so it was born based on, here's how we did this. And people seem to kind of enjoy that model as well too.
Yeah, I did find your first book. I was going to ask you about that because you're almost becoming known for this, 200% life. It's, like self-brand or personal branding of like, oh, this is the book you're connected. You're not necessarily known as much for connecting, with this other book. And since the book has been out earlier, I was like, what did you learn from that book? You're like, oh, okay, I know about the power of books. I know about kind of this elevated status that I'm able to get. And I believe this book peaked at like a much higher sales rank than,
Yeah.
I don't know if you track all this stuff. There are sites that track it, but so your book on August 14th, 2019 hit number 855 on
Wow.
all of Amazon, right?
That's
Top
awesome.
1,000 in all of Amazon, which I track a lot of books.
Yeah.
Not many make the top
Yeah.
1,000. Not many make the top 10,000. So
Yeah.
like all the way, like if as a marketer, I would be using that to be like, hey guys, this is the book that hit this sales rank. It's quite impressive. It's been out for over 1,800 days,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I'm not surprised that like the power of books kind of gets reinforced of like, oh, I've done this before, I've seen
Yep.
what happened, and then I hope a lot of people kind of take, especially if they're running an organization, can say, look, I've got kind of these ideas in my head. This is kind of how we're running things around here. Let's kind of crystallize it. We'll put it out, even just to our organization, and then if it's like, we kind of rework this, and if other people can benefit from it, great. It's on Amazon. It's print on demand. It's not something you have to manage in house and hire
Exactly.
someone to ship orders.
Yeah.
And if no one buys it, no one buys it.
Exactly.
But if it helps one person,
Yeah.
I hope people kind of take that of like, yeah, it can help one person, and
You know,
you're gonna write it anyway.
what the really cool thing is you just never know who it's going to help. Like, you kind of, when you write a book, like, some people have this idea of like, oh, it's going to be the next, like, number one bestseller, all this stuff. And it's like, those are great. That's wonderful that people kind of do that. But the reality is like, throughout a course of a year, if you get a couple emails a month of just somebody emailing and saying, hey, I read your book and it helped me immensely, and like it just comes out of the blue. I mean, you've changed somebody's life, right? I mean, it's books for me have never were about making money from them. It was more about memorializing a message that gets out there that helps everybody, and for you to put your own thoughts down, which I think is really important as well too.
Oh, it's a huge personal accomplishment. Like there are very few people that get all the way through the process of writing a book. We're still in that age where if you tell somebody you're an author, people are like, really?
I know.
I've never met an author before. And it's like I don't consider myself someone special. I just wrote a really long PDF and uploaded it to the internet. But people don't realize that. We still live in a world where people think you must have an agent, you must have got a big advance and have a professional editor, and like everybody must have approved your book as being so amazing.
Yeah.
And I think what people forget, just like you said, where you might help one or two people. Like if you get an email from somebody that says your book helped me immensely, I would make the case that it does not stop there. If someone is helped so much that they reach out to the author, I guarantee they are telling people about that. They're telling somebody. They're gifting that book to someone. They're buying it for their whole organization, whatever the book might be. So it kind of compounds. And like those things don't happen if you don't stop and write the book. And it doesn't have to be the longest book ever. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to encompass every single thing about your industry. It just has to exist. It has to be your own personal story. And people identify with different stories. There will be people who identify specifically with your story. I listened to what you said to Nick on the Book Maker podcast about you're growing up and kind of escaping a bad situation. I don't have that story. I can't tell that story. So like if someone would identify with that, they're not going to identify with me, but they'll identify with you. So I'm glad you put your book out there. And I encourage everybody that's potentially listening to this, put your story on paper, put it out there. There's really a lot of potential upside. and I can't think of a single downside
Exactly
other
right.
than, I mean, you could say, oh, well, my time, it took me so long and like I didn't see a return on my, but you learned something, right? It wasn't sunk time. It's not video game time or Netflix time. It's, I learned how to publish a book time.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And that's, in my opinion, a valuable skill that, can translate for personal brands or take it to your company. If you're the first
Yeah.
person in your company to learn how to do this, take it to your company. Say, you know what, we should publish some of our work processes here. Really, really good help. A lot of ways you can go with it.
Love it.
I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask some of these questions
Yeah.
because I think they all kind of relate in a sense of like as you're growing up, and then you almost have like several moments of I need to make a change or I need to make a decision.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty universal, like just across the human experience, because you go through childhood, you go through adolescence, and in a sense, I would make the case that we're programmed in a way. We see the outside world, we make, conclusions about what is important, what should we think is important, what are other people seeing as important, is that what I should be seeing? And the younger you are, you don't really have the mental capacity to really analyze all that and decide what you want to do. Then as you get older, you do have that capacity to be like, wait a minute, is this who I want to be? Is this what I value? Is getting the car in the house really what I want? Because then you get it and you're like, oh, because it's so common, right?
Mhm.
These are not like unique stories where like so many people say like I finally got the success and like I didn't care and no one else cared
Mhm.
either, and it's like this kind of crisis moment. So is there a way to help people identify potential times to sit down and make those like changes, which are incredibly hard to actually make? Conceptualize, sure, I'm gonna start working out. Actually internalize that change and make that choice every day, difficult, especially if you're trying to do it multiple times, like, almost as like life events. I don't know if you thought about it that way and like how someone could be able to take that advice and make it practical.
Yeah, I think anybody that goes down that path or goes down a personal spiritual journey path, they want to. So your intent has to be there, number one. There's plenty of people that, that would listen, that wouldn't listen to this or listen to any podcast that's out there about self-help. And they just want to listen to anything that tells them how to go get what they want. And that's what they want to go do. Right.
They
Until
want the shortcuts, right?
Yes, exactly. Right. Until some point in time, they wake up, and usually it's somebody experiences some level of discomfort, pain, something happens in their life that gets them to question what they're actual doing. I think that's important for people. And that just happened to me early in my life when I was in high school. It was just a moment. You call it a spiritual moment, a personal. It was just a moment that happened. And in that moment, it was more of like, what am I doing with my life? And this is not the direction I want to take it. Nobody really knows what direction you're going to head because it's just life. But I knew that what I was doing was not right. And so I had to make that decision in that moment that I was going to no longer live this life again. And that's just the way I kind of like look at that was I was very insecure. A lot of emotions that a lot of people have when you're growing up, and I ended up being 100 pounds overweight and in the drugs and failing classes, and I was like, this is not the life that I want to live. And so I just made a complete overhaul change and lost 100 pounds in a year. I ended up not hanging out with the kids I was hanging out with, and I think there was just a pivotal moment of like, you can actually start to direct your life if you are willing to go through the pain. And the way I kind of look at this is you're never going to duck pain. You're going to have pain from mediocrity or you're going to have pain from growth. And you just get to decide which one. I always like to think of it as like if your hand ever falls asleep, right? When it's asleep, it doesn't hurt. But when you start to bring it back to life, it gets so painful before it goes away. And it's like the same exact thing that happens in your life when you want to make a change like that. It's guess what? It's going to be more painful for a period of time, but then you'll get through it and there won't be that pain anymore. Now, it'll be a different challenge that shows up because they just always do. But that's the thing. And depending on how deep you want to go in this conversation, I don't want to lose anybody, but it's funny because the reality is people are really the sum of all of their learned experiences. So again, my experiences are different than your experiences. And so there is a psyche or a self-concept or an ego that's developed based on the own experience you had, books you read, the TV the shows that you've watched, the classes that you've interacted with, the mentors you've had, the parents you've had, all the experiences you've had have shaped this self-concept. Again, it's created based on your experiences. But I always go one step further, and this is where it goes really a little bit deeper if you wanted to, which is that's not you. You are the one watching someone have the experiences of all your learned experiences. Because in order for you to identify the fact of going, wow, I'm feeling anger, or I feel like I should have this hope, or I have this dream, there's a subject object relationship that has to exist there. So who you really are is, there's objects of consciousness, which is just planes, houses, things that you do, titles that you have. And then there's consciousness of who you are yourself, which is the one who's actually watching objects of consciousness. And so we'll just put a pin there, but like there's a deeper layer if people are listening that like there is a self-concept that has its own hopes, has its own dreams, that wants to take it in this direction, that wants to change. And those are wonderful things to do and work on. But there's a deeper level to this, which is who is the one that knows that there's somebody that wants to change? Who's the one that knows there's a dream in there? How do you know you dreamt last night? Weren't you the same one that looked in the mirror when you were 10 as looking in the mirror now? You just see a different reflection of a physical body. Again, who's the one? So again, who's the one experiencing all these things that are there? And with that intent, you're actually able to come into the physical world much easier and tackle the challenges that show up because it's just part of the life that we get to live.
I could go down this road all day. It's very kind of timely in the sense of like I feel I'm trying to like actively do some changes. I've had like a big kind of worldview shift over the past, I'd probably say 10 years. Huge shift, and just learning more about things and kind of realizing, oh, the way that I thought about things, it's not trying to like beat yourself up for being wrong, but like, oh, I was incorrect. There's actually more to this. And I definitely feel as if I have like multiple voices in my head.
Yeah.
And that always sounds like, oh, you should see a psychiatrist, or like, oh, that's not actually multiple
Everybody
personality.
does.
That's the thing, everybody does. But I would make the case that most people, maybe in America or just Western society, were kind of taught that you are who you are. You're this person. You're like a pilot in a body. It's who you are. You're always gonna. So if you're not good at something, it's like, oh, that's just who I am. Or like, well, not necessarily, right? So I try to describe it as if you can see something from multiple points of view, then yes, you can think of like I have two voices in my head. One voice is saying it could be seen this way, and the other one is like maybe, but also could be seen this way. And then something I kind of struggle with is when I see something like that, I have to decide which one I'm going to believe.
Remember,
Right?
Chris, the deeper question you want to ask is who hears the voice?
Yeah, so it gets really weird, right? And like you're trying to figure this out as the voice, and you're like, wait a minute,
You're not the voice. You're not the voice, right? Like, see, remember, in order to hear the voice, there has to be a subject-object relationship. That's why when you look at like when you look at the 100% outer world, right, which is the voice inside your head, the emotions that you feel, right, the roles we play, all those things are they're there. Everyone has a voice inside your head. Everyone can make it say hello 10 times right now, right? Make it say hello, right? Think of an apple. You can think of the image. You can think of the emotion that comes. You are in there using your brain, your mind, if you will. But then there's the personal mind. The personal mind is the one that jumps in and starts to narrate life for you. Even in this situation, how many people listening to this right now, or even you, Chris, listening to this, are actually listening to me talk, or are you listening to the mind narrate what you should say or what question you should ask, or I don't really like what Adam said there, or he should have said this, or Chris should have asked this question. Most people are actually listening to the voice narrate life for them. So, and then that's what they think life is. That's why there's all these concepts that people are teaching, which is be in the present moment, awaken. All those aren't big concepts. All they are is stop paying so much attention to that voice inside your head that you think is you. And once you ask the deeper question, which is who's the one who actually hears this voice, that's how you recognize who you really are.
It could, yeah, we could keep going down into quite a rabbit hole. But I hope, if we just almost kind of stop there on that kind of thought, I hope people just dig a little deeper. So if some of this stuff is resonating with people, dig a little bit deeper, question your own assumptions about kind of what you've been taught. For me, I was growing up like there's a story for your life, as if I almost didn't have control over anything, where I was very much a passive observer. And when good things happen, when bad things happen, I would hope that in the future bad things wouldn't happen. I would hope in the future that good things would happen, and really losing a sense of agency in my life. And it's a difficult struggle to get out of, because I feel it's just really easy to slip back into, what you've known for so long in your life. It's like, well, that's easier. It's like this conscious decision to be like, no, active choice, decision making, observe what's around, like what do you actually want to do? And it's hard. One thing you were talking about, and I do talk to a lot of people who try to find the shortcuts, and I try to tell them there really aren't any shortcuts. I do try to help people understand that. I think there's some study about this. I'd love to hear your opinion on it. That one way to actually get a shortcut or to actually change something dramatically in your life in a very short period of time is unfortunately a negative traumatic event,
Mhm.
a death in the family, a divorce, a bankruptcy, like negative traumatic events. Those are things that generally like, oh, what happened to that guy? Oh, this happened, and now he's completely turned into a different person. And I don't think there is a way, and I don't think it would be healthy to try to manufacture a negative traumatic event in order to fast track this. But on the flip side, without that, it is, the way to have that change is with time,
Yeah.
and it takes a long time. I've seen and experienced similar, like in my life, major changes are about a 4, 5, 6 year process. It just takes that long. And I've heard from other people who go through something similar, like, yeah, it took me about 5 years. Um, and I don't know if that's a benchmark. This is anecdotal type evidence. So yeah, change is possible slowly, or change is possible quickly, often tied to a negative traumatic event. And honestly, just knowing that kind of helped me understand that, like, no, like, stop trying to shortcut this, take the time. Hopefully a negative traumatic event doesn't happen to you, but if it does, deal with it at that point. But knowing that helped me stop looking for the shortcut. And I don't know. So I hope that helps somebody. I don't know if you've heard something similar, or experienced something similar, or maybe even just looking back at your life, be like, oh, that makes sense.
Well, I think, whether you're a vertebrae, an insect, an animal, or a human sapien, the reality is every creature on this world faces adversity. And adversity is what actually shapes and gets you to think a little bit differently. Think about the adversity that you incur when you're in high school, right? And that is different, and how you thought about the world in high school is different than probably how you think about the world today. So actually, it's everything is for growth. I always like to think of like karma as life's education. It's not really about to get you, or like you do something and it's going to come back and haunt you. And that's more of a malicious attack on it. The reality is, I just see it as, if you do an action in the world, life's going to give you education. So if you take a test and you don't do really well, it's going to come back with some feedback. So if you're taking an action in the world, the karma is going to come back with your education. It's going to come back and show you where you can grow if you're open to realizing that there's adversity for everything. Look, life is not about getting what you want. That's way overrated. It's people in our specifically Western society wake up every day and everyone tells you, and they get a life coach and everyone's like, go figure out what you want. But the reality is people have been getting what they want for their entire life. Right. And just go back to your, like, when you were 6, you wanted a bunny and you got it. Is your life perfectly fine now? No. When you really wanted your driver's license when you were 16, you got it. Great. And you got a car. Is your life perfect now? No. Then you wanted to get through college or high school, whatever it is, and play captain of the football team. And you got all these different things that you wanted throughout your life, and it's never been permanently fine. For a moment, I agree, when you get what you want, you feel good for a moment, right? And then all of a sudden it's to the next thing of like, what then next can I convince myself that I can get? And this is the problem with money, is that people, they end up thinking like, oh, I just made $100,000. Like, but if I just made $250,000, it would be perfect. And then you get $250,000. Then you go, if I just made $1 million, that's when it would really take off, right? And then you make $1 million, and then it is like, but if it was 10 million, then it would be a whole different story. You've convinced yourself it's 10 million. Then it's like 50 million, and then you make 50 million, and you're going, okay, right? Everyone's been telling, like, there's plenty of people. I think wisdom is applying what people have gone through for their own experiences and applying it into your life before you've had the experience. So you go back to some of the questions and kind of link them two together that you've said, which is, how do people kind of not go through a adversity or negative event, or how do people make big changes in their life? It's through wisdom. And sometimes, though, the wisdom isn't enough. People need to go through their own education in order to realize that. But there are models and systems and people that are writing books every day that are trying to say, Chris, wake up. I've been in your shoes. I understand you're going after money, or whoever it is, right? Like, whatever it is, the situation you're in. But let me tell you, it's not going to be the end all. Then whenever I say it, people go, well, it must be easy for you, Adam. You have plenty of money. And I go, yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying. You should go get it. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go make a goal, whatever the goal is that you want. I want you to go after it as hard as you can. You want to run a marathon, you want to do an Ironman, you want to make $1 million, you want to make 500,000, you want to make 50 grand, whatever. And you convinced yourself that this is going to be the end goal. So this is part of the practice people can do. I want you to go after it. And then after you get it, you tell me how you're doing. And you tell me after a week of how you're doing. And the reality is, every time I've done this in my organization, people always come back and go, you're right. I've now convinced myself that I went and I made this amount of money, and I actually feel worse. And the reason why people feel worse is because when you're on your way to get something, you're convincing yourself, you're doing a mental rehearsal in your mind that goes, hey, this is what people do when they set a goal, right? There's nothing wrong with goals. Goals have a beginning and an end, but they're not the purpose of your life. Goals are great for keeping you on track. But what you really do with decisions, and when you go, I need to go make $500,000, what you build is this mental image in your mind. It's like a mental movie, and you're playing it. And then you're seeing how that movie's playing out and how it makes you feel. And if it makes you feel good, you go after it. If you don't like it, then you don't go after it. That's how, by the way, how everyone makes decisions. That's why when you put clothes on in the morning, you pretty much know whether the clothing apparel that you've selected is appropriate for the weather condition. So why do you go look in a mirror? Because what you're really going to do is you're going to look to see how it hits your experience. Again, of the things that you do. And this is why people struggle with decisions so much. What should I do with my life? People ask all the time, like, Adam, I need to go find my passion. I go, that's a wonderful question. And you absolutely should find your passion. But let me ask you a deeper question. Why can't you just be passionate for anything you do? Wouldn't that be a better way to live your life? And they go, yeah, but I don't want to do that. And I go, okay, great. Then you're going to suffer all your life, because now you've put in a preference for how life needs to be for you to be okay. The problem with doing that is that it's never permanent, because the minute you get the corner office, then you're going to go, this isn't enough. And then it becomes this insatiable pit that you can never satisfy. Again, it's like you get a house, and then you got to get a dog, and you got to remodel your kitchen, and you just get caught in this trap. And this is where people are. And they come and they ask all these questions, the same question everyone asks me all the time, which is, okay, I've gotten everything. Like, how do I get okay? Like, is there something else I need to go get? There's nothing else you need to go get. There's nothing wrong with getting any of those things, by the way. There's nothing wrong with making money, improving your life. You should go do that. But just don't ever do any of that thinking that it's going to permanently make you feel okay. And that's where part of my story happened, was when I had this goal of $500,000 in income. And the minute I was like 26, 27 years old, I made $500,000 of income. And I just remember I was at a holiday party, and my mom was there, and I told my mom, I was like, I made $500,000. And like, I remember my mom being like, oh, that's great. Pass the ketchup. And in that moment, I realized that like she didn't care. And then I asked the deeper question. I was like, well, I don't even care. So why am I doing all of this? And from there, I was like, well, then I went into this kind of, I wouldn't say depression, but it was more of like searching for truth. Then what is the reason why we're here? If it's not just to accomplish something to make myself temporarily feel okay. I always thought like once I had $500,000, that like somehow there was going to be a fruit tree in my backyard filling me with inspiration every day, right? That just doesn't happen. This is part of our challenges as entrepreneurs and individuals. We buy into this concept that everyone says, Chris, go be successful. And what do people really mean? What they're saying is you should go get enough power, fame, leverage, money, attention, attraction, letters after your name, so that when you wake up, you can control the experiences around you, so you can have the experience that you're really looking for, so it doesn't hit your stuff too much and it hits just right. Well, the problem with doing that is you will end up finding yourself in a massive suffering for the rest of your life, because once you get it, you're going to be worried that it's going to go away. Once you get some level of success, and it's like there, or like people don't like my posts anymore, they don't like my book, or how am I supposed to take care of my family, or I built this lifestyle. It gets never ending for people. So at some point you wake up and go, I'm not going to play this game anymore. It doesn't mean you're not going to participate in life. The whole point of life is to learn how to be in the world, but not of it, right? Somebody else said it better than I did, right? It's about being in the world, playing with the world, taking on a father role, a mother role, a CEO, a janitor role, a bus driver, whatever, you're a friend. I mean, in the course of a day, how many different roles do people play? They become a janitor, and they're picking up, and then they're becoming a father, then they're becoming a husband, and then they're becoming a partner to somebody else in business, and then they're becoming, a leader for their employees or their clients. And they come back to being a friend with the group they go. So you play all these different roles. They're not more important. They're just roles that we play in life, and they're fun, and you should enjoy them, but they're not who you are. They are not who you are. Who you are is the one that's getting to experience this human body, right? Which is just temporary, that of experiencing this world. And that's why consciousness came in here, was for it to experience itself. If there's not a duality, it can't experience itself. Because if consciousness is just consciousness, there is no way for it to experience itself, because there's nothing else to contrast it to. So you create this physical world, which then contrasts the spiritual world. And that's why it feels different. And that's how it can experience itself.
Well, I think that leads you perfectly into like the 200% life, because it's 100%, 100%, where people are, frequently. And I don't know if you know, I hope I get the name right. Torkel Farrow, he wrote a book called The Pulse Cure, is another friend of Nick's.
No.
So I interviewed him, and he was talking about how like our senses have, developed and evolved to perceive the outside world, but we don't have senses for the inner world. Like historically, we didn't need that kind of thing. Um, so I mean, that really just leads into like your book, 100% and 100%, and that's where the 200% comes from. And I'm super glad that you've built a website with marketing in mind, so people can go to your website, they can see the book, they can get a preview, they can join your newsletter and see all of this. You'll get more information from people who this is really hitting with, because I got to believe this is such a, I don't want to say common problem, but almost like a universal problem, because people
Yes.
are looking for things. They want permanence in their life. They want permanent safety, in a sense. And if I have these letters after my name, if I have this much money in my bank account, I'll feel permanently safe. And then it's like, well, nothing, literally nothing is
Yeah.
permanent. Everything is going to change. Have you ever read the book, The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing, right? It's
Yes.
like you have to keep playing the game instead of trying to win. Like, you can't win.
Yes.
So if you keep trying to win, you're going to get frustrated.
Well, it's funny. I mean, people have been talking about this for hundreds of thousands of years, right? Like, I mean, this is not like the first time. People are just keep saying it in their own perspective of how they're doing it. Everyone says it a little differently. That's why though I believe the world is waking up, because they're finally realizing, okay, the world's become so efficient that I'm pretty much able to get, for most of us, what we want, right? Relatively speaking. Maybe not everyone's flying around in a helicopter and a yacht, but like, you get my point, right?
We have our basic needs met, where we're
Exactly.
able to go down these roads. We have time to explore
That's
consciousness.
exactly right. And so now they're waking up and they're going, I'm not feeling authentic. That's the word people will use. And really what they're saying is, I'm not having a good inner experience. Because the only thing that people are looking for, the only reason why people want money is because they believe it'll make their inner experience better. The only reason why people want a relationship, for the most part, is because they believe it'll make their inner experience better. So everything that people end up doing is because they want their inside turned on to experience and feel that energy. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the game. That's the playing the worldly game. I'm manipulating people, places, and things to make myself feel better inside. I'm just doing it with outside objects. Well, there's a faster way to get there, which is to go, how come I don't feel that way all day? And then bring that into everything that I do. And that's the intent that people need to bring. And that's a lifelong journey, but that's where people are, a lot of people anyways, that are now waking up and going, yeah, this doesn't work. It doesn't work like people tell me it does. I don't feel good anymore. And people are really, because I'm a pretty real person, so people are pretty honest with me, and they're going, man, I just made $500,000 last month and I feel worse. And people, and I don't have anybody to talk about this to, because everyone thinks I'm crazy. And I'm going, no, you're not at all. You've just bought into the fact of you making $6 million a year is somehow going to make you feel amazing. And it doesn't. But by the way, that's what everyone's been trying to tell you. And you go, I know, now I get it. And it's almost like they have these experiences of what it is, but and I just use that number. It can be anything, right? It could be, oh, I got married and I thought that was going to be the most perfect thing. Well, is it? No. It's like, then you get into a whole other, and there's nothing wrong with any of these things. That's why I wrote the book, The 200% Life, because life is never really 100% in the outer world, nor is it 100% going to live in a cave reciting haikus around a fireplace. Like, that's not comfortable either. It's actually about leaning into life, using life as your teacher, your education, and figuring out where you need to let go so you can purify yourself. To me, the only reason why we're even here is to grow spiritually, meaning that we use life as a way to purify ourselves so we can grow deeper. It's like a training camp of consciousness. We come down here for half a second and we leave, right? I mean, because we all come in here, we're all going to die. It's pretty obvious that we're all going to do this. And by the way, if the earth has been here for 5 billion years, we've been here for what? Human sapiens have been around for a couple 100,000 years, maybe, right? The best guess is 200 to 300,000 years. We know nothing about anything, but yet we wake up every day and we go, I know how life should be. Do you? Because you don't make your heart beat. You don't make your pancreas secrete. How do you make yourself see? How do you make yourself hear? How do you make yourself grow fingernails? Nobody does any of this. So 99.99% of everything that's happening in life, we allow it to just happen. But then there's just the 5 things that we need to happen that we must control. And hence, this is where when the Buddha went out and said, I figured out why all of life is suffering, he said, all of life is suffering because of preference or desire. I don't mean desire like lust. I mean, I want life to be a certain way. I want my kids to act a certain way. I want them to be a certain way. And if they're not, I suffer. That is why people suffer.
We want to control like things that aren't under our control.
Nothing really. It's just an illusion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't give credit for the fact that the things that the body does with the amount of power the body requires. And I think I always, it sounds like a silly thing to be impressed by, but the body's virtually silent at the same time, right?
Yes.
We can't even build a robot that does anything that the human body does, let alone a very minimal power, and let alone practically silent. And it's pretty impressive, and we have no control over it, but we take it for granted, right? Because it's hard not to, because that's just most people's experience. You wake up, everything just works, kind of thing. Would you say, and where we've gotten to as a society, where people have kind of this mindset, would you say it's almost not intentional, but just it's so common because of society, the way that we've built it, the human history that we have, that's where we are. It's like it's nobody's fault that they haven't really kind of woken up, kind of, in a sense. And maybe your book will help accelerate the kind of waking up process. But it's almost like if you had like a graph, you could see people kind of popping up and be like, oh wait, I get it. We're playing the wrong game. Oh wait, I get it. I don't have this under my control. Oh wait, I get it. And maybe as more and more people kind of pop up, like that will spread quickly, and we can almost remake society in a way that doesn't put value on these things.
Well, I think that's a beautiful question, Chris. The reality is just take a perspective for a second. Earth is sitting here, right? I just saw a picture of one of the satellites that went out there. It took a picture from like 370 million miles away, and you couldn't even barely see Earth. It was a spot in the middle of blackness.
Oh, the pale blue dot? Is that what the one?
You see that? Yeah, wasn't that cool, right? It was awesome. Like, just gave such perspective again. And so there's, just as an example of this, right? There's billions of planets, stars in each galaxy, and there are trillions of galaxies. So you can't do that math, right? But like, just comprehend. The one thing that human sapiens can do, us, right, is we can abstractly think about things. So if there's billions of planets, stars in each galaxy, and there are trillions of galaxies, Earth could be demolished in a half a second, and the cosmos, the consciousness, wouldn't even feel vibration. It would literally be like a piece of grass in the middle of Texas being removed in the entire Earth. It would just be gone. And there would be nothing, and the consciousness wouldn't even think about it, right? It's just that large of what we are from that perspective on it. So it gives you this ability of going, man, we're not really in control of any of this. And consciousness itself, if it doesn't evolve in the way it is, it'll just move on to something else. And it's just, we are just here kind of getting this wonderful opportunity to experience things. Like if they found a roach on Mars, it would be on every single paper. But yet you have a mosquito that flies around you and you like want to kill it. Like, it's like there's so much going on that's just beautiful. I mean, every day it's like Disneyland for us. There's different color people. There's the different people. Some people yell at you. Some people like you. Birds are singing to you. Sometimes it's windy. Sometimes it's sunny, right? I mean, it's just Disneyland every day for humans. But yet we ruin our experience here because we wake up with, if it's not the way I want, then I don't feel good. And there's 8.4 billion people on the earth who wake up every day going, I want it a different way. That's what this is why there's wars. This is why there's so much conflict. And so, like, why can't you just wake up and truly just whatever you are getting to experience, you experience? And the reason why you can't do that is because that voice inside your head is telling you what you should like, what you should dislike, and you buy into the fact that that's who you are.
I almost wonder if it's a bit of a curse of our generation now, where we see all of these other things. Of course, with social media, we can see people with Lamborghinis, we can see people with mansions, and we start to desire these things. And it's definitely an accelerated version of human history more recently with technology and all these innovations, where if you go back like 200 years, 300 years, every generation was pretty similar, right? Yeah. Like, it wasn't like, oh, like, don't listen to grandpa. Like, now, like, most people's probably great grandparents were probably, unfortunately, pretty racist.
Yeah.
Right. But we've changed, right? So now we look back, we're like, oh my gosh, like grandpa's still alive. However, like, we don't really agree with what he says. 300 years ago, no, there wasn't there. Like, everybody agreed with everybody. Life was going to be the same no matter what. I would almost guess there wasn't as much of the kind of life envy because we didn't have options either. Like you really couldn't have the option to go make $500,000. Now that option is on the table. And I try to remind myself to stay impressed with a lot of things that don't impress people today. I get impressed flying in an airplane. And most people get on the plane, they shut the window, they take a nap. And I'm like, dude, like we are going 600 miles an hour. Like that's pretty fast in this metal plane. This is incredible. Like it was Charles Lindbergh who flew over the Atlantic and took pictures of the tops of clouds. And the only people who got to see those pictures were wealthy people because they only had like one copy. So who are they going to show them to? Like people paid money to see these things.
I
A
know.
pineapple used to cost the equivalent of $5,000 in Europe. And people would rent a pineapple to put on their table to show off to their fancy guests at their dinner party. They have to give it back. The color purple could only be made from this like little tiny seashell, and it took a million of them to make one blanket. That's why purple is the color of royalty, because only royalty could have these things. But now we can go on Amazon and order a purple blanket. It'll be here in 6 hours for $12. And so we don't appreciate these. But if those people were alive today and be like, oh my gosh, I can get a purple blanket, my life will be complete. And you're like, let me tell you, a purple blanket is not going to make you feel any better. We have unlimited pineapple. Like I'm just going to gorge myself on pineapple. Like, knock yourself out. I guess it's really not that good, right?
Yeah.
Like all of these things, but it's comparison.
Yeah.
And I think, was it Roosevelt? Comparison is the thief of joy. And it's like, just be so thankful for what you have, the opportunities that you have, that you don't look on and compare and think, oh, I'll be happy when. And it's how do you fast track that? How do you get that lesson through to somebody without them having to learn it themselves? I know some lessons you can learn from other people's experiences, and some you have to learn yourself.
I think there's two things. One is you just got to look back in your own life and realize you've already learned the lessons you're looking for. I mean, that's really kind of how I started with me. Like, you learn the lessons you're looking for. I've already gotten what I want, and I realized it didn't work many, many times in your life. And don't allow that mind to creep in there and say, but it's if you get the next loan, it'll work.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I had a really good point and I just lost it. It was really good though.
Was it about purple blankets or pineapples?
Purple blankets. I know, that's what it was. It was. It'll come to me, and I'll just jump in.
You'll get it. You'll get it. You don't build Lego, do you? Are you a Lego guy?
No, I'm not. But I have
Lego.
Yeah, I've been building 3D with my. I actually built this 3D machine with my son, and we've been having a lot of fun playing around with that. Oh, you know what I was going to say on that same topic was, the reality is I believe in probably 20 to 30 years, our world will be so efficient that you'll be able to print anything that people want in their life, right? If you go back 150 years ago, people, it was, you were lauded if you were overweight, right? Because that was a sign of wealth. So the more overweight you were, people lauded that whole thing, right? Forget about health. Now, you fast forward when food became ubiquitous and everyone can eat it everywhere, it's the opposite. Right. So then people that restrict themselves or eat healthier or don't indulge in all that stuff are now considered laudie or sexy or whatever you want to refer to it as. Right. That's generally in a public's eye. And now it's things, but things are going to be coming just like food is. Things will be able to be printed. You'll be able to have it at some point in time in the future. You'll be able to have anything that you want to have. I actually think that jobs will no longer be a choice. Will be a choice. So you're not doing it for money. You're actually doing it because you want to contribute or be within it whatever you want. And your basic human needs for most people will be met. And I think we're getting so efficient in our world. Just like if you were to tell somebody 150 years ago that there's going to be food everywhere, people will be like, no, there never will. You'll be able to print a Lamborghini, right? If you want to, right? Like whatever it is, you'll be able to have all these things. And I think it's going to be people that go back to this simplistic nature and then apply themselves for no other reason but to contribute, just like an apple tree shows up and produces apples every year for no other reason to produce the apples.
No, I have very similar kind of thoughts along that, like whether it's going into universal basic income or like just let people have their needs met and let them do whatever they want, let them create, let them play, whatever they want to do. Most people do not want to just make bad choices every day, right? If they have the option to make a good choice. And if everything is efficient and everything is very low cost, people will have everything. And I hope we can get away from like the comparison of
Yes.
like what other people have. And because I grew up very poor, I still remember I delivered newspapers every day, $5 a day, saving up my money because I wanted to buy this color handheld video game. It wasn't the Game Boy. Maybe someone will know what I'm talking about. It's the TurboGrafx 16, had a portable version with like a little CRT TV screen, had a TV adapter so you could watch TV in bed. I'm like, oh yeah, watching TV in bed. That's the thing. Because like back then, nobody had TVs, in their rooms. Are you kidding? And growing up poor, no one had any of this stuff. And I thought, hey, if I had some of these things, then people are going to be envious of me. And then, I'll be safe. I'll be cool because I'm looking at other people that had things. I'm like, oh man, those guys are so cool because they have X, Y, and Z. And this is like a very, young version, a young mindset to look at these things. And I never did buy it, but I still kind of struggle to go back and like, oh, I'll be successful if I have these things. And you have to like break yourself out and be like, no, I don't want to think that way. Because now I remember reading Car and Driver and all these things like, oh, look at the new Corvette, right? There's like, in the 90s, it goes 0 to 60 in like 6.2 seconds, right? And now like a Toyota Camry will do 6.2 seconds. And a Tesla does like 1.9. And you're
Exactly.
like, wait a minute, I thought I would be happy if I had a car that went 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. And now everybody has a car that goes 0 to 60 in 6 seconds, So when everybody has it,
Yep.
then all of a sudden it's not cool anymore. It's like the iPhone, right? For Pete's sakes, what we have right here, if we had this 20 years ago, we would be the king of the world, right?
Yep.
We'd be the most powerful person in the world. But now that everybody has it, like, mine's got a crack in it, so I don't like it anymore. And I just try to remind myself all the time of like, no, like, and it's hard.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's like my default programming. And I make the case that like, if you have whatever's programmed in your head, almost like an operating system, if you want to either uninstall or install something else, you've got limited memory up there. So like, there's no room to put the new program until you get rid of some of the old program. And man, getting rid of some of that old program is, I find, difficult.
That's why the most important thing you need to have, and you ask the first question, which is intention, which is that you have to want to break free of this old way. And you have to really want it. If you don't want it, there's too many pulls and distractions and you'll go back into it. But your intent, you got to like set your pole star or your North Star, right? Of I'm here every day to grow. So here's some tactical things people can take away. Number one, one thing that we teach in our company, which is, it's called 3-2-1 relax and release. I call it RRA, which is like something like all of a sudden you get an email from somebody that just has pissed you off. You were fine. I always use the phone, right? All of a sudden you're sitting there and all of a sudden you see the phone and you see the number of the person calling you, instantly get disturbed. Like you're pissed off instantly. I haven't talked to them yet, but just because you see it, now you're disturbed. And so the whole thing is about, to me, is spirituality, which is about just handling life, being able to actually handle the situation in front of you, not from a disturbed state. If you're a doctor and you can't handle a sight of blood, you're no good to the situation. Well, if you're a parent and you can't handle your kids screaming in a grocery store, you're no good to the situation. If you're a leader and you can't handle a disturbing situation or a tough situation, you're no good as a leader. So the first and most important thing is this makes you a fierce competitor. So 3-2-1 relax is like the first thing you do is just because you tense up when you see it, you go 3-2-1, just kind of drop your shoulders, relax, and then release the energy. It doesn't mean that the disturbance will go away, but you relax behind it and then you act, right? You don't only act once it's no longer, it's you acting from this disturbed spot. I always talk about spirituality is not about changing what you do. It's about changing the part of you that's interacting with what you're doing. So if you're interacting from the self-concept or this disturbed state, you will pollute the world, right? You will come away from angry. You'll yell at your spouse or yell at your client, and then only to come back the next day and be like, oh, sorry, shouldn't have done that. Again, that's how you start to prevent these things. So it's every time you feel disturbed, the easiest thing to do is just relax, release, and then act if there's an action that's necessary. It's never about passivity. People always think like, oh, I'm going to relax or surrender. I'm just going to get like people like let them steal my cars. And it's like, no, that's nothing to do with it. What you're doing is you're surrendering you. And one common thing that people, when they start on this journey, is that when you surrender or relax, it doesn't mean the emotion goes away right away. So who's in there experiencing the discomfort of anger, you're relaxed. The anger itself has its own nature, which is to be angry, and it feels different. Like we are so unbelievable psychologists already. We can tell the difference between jealousy. No, I'm not jealous. I'm mad. No, I'm not mad. I'm angry. No, I'm irritated. And it's just the subtle differences of how we feel inside, but then we can label them. That's how powerful we are. But who's the one that's experiencing them? So the first thing you do is when you feel a disturbance or emotion, or the voice in your head taking over, you just 3-2-1 relax, and you get as calm, as clear as possible, and then you take action.
So is this the stuff that's outlined in your book? If someone's like, this is really hitting, like,
yeah, it is.
This is what I need. Because we've talked about a lot of things. We've touched on your book, given that this is the Authorpreneur podcast, talking with authors and how they're using their books in business. And we've talked about a lot of different things. I think people get a lot of value out of kind of resetting and kind of reframing and kind of just trying to think about consciousness and reality and interactions and just what we're in control of and maybe what we're not, and kind of help people see that, hey, if you felt like you haven't been in control, that's okay. There's probably reasons for that. But if you want to have some change, there are ways to do that, and just understanding the pathways to change instead of seeing someone else and be like, oh, they changed overnight, I want to do that. Like it's probably deeper. That their change wasn't just what you saw, from your point of view. Um, but I do want to ask you a little bit more about how you're using your book specifically with your business. Like, how have you found your book? Because I know you're maybe positioning yourself as like this is more of like a personal brand book, the 200% Life, and then how the launch of the book has kind of impacted your business and your personal brand, and what your kind of future plans or goals are for using the book to kind of bring people back into your world and kind of give them some help, assistance, benefit through your book.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, the first part is you wrote the book so that people inside our organization could be aligned on our core values, right? Which is, I like to think of our organization, we're 51% culture, 49% profit. And while profit's really important, typically people go in business, they tip the scales one or two ways. They tip it with, they want to be part of a culture, which to our culture is personal growth through business success, right? So it's not that we don't succeeding or highly profitable or, or we don't fire people, we don't hire people. We do all of those. I mean, it's all part of it, right? It's just at the end of the day, we're knowing why we're here and what we're doing is to grow personally through this. So the book helps remind people and use that as a model of inside our organization to what our core values are, right? That's number one. It's really important for us to have so that everyone that comes in and reads the book, if they don't like it and it's not part of the organization, they probably shouldn't be here, right? That's just as simple as that. Not that they're great people. There's different personalities, different everything out there, right? And then
I
from
like that
there,
it's a litmus test, right? It's like,
yes,
if
exactly.
you can't read this book, then you probably
It's like
are
no
not a good
different
fit.
than like you go through Hell Week and you can't get through Hell Week, you probably shouldn't be a Navy SEAL, right? Like, so it's just like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
You're
it's not
right.
personal.
Just,
Yeah.
it's exactly what it is. And then, so the same thing also that we do to help attract people into our organization, which is to use books like this or, any type of messaging that we do, even these podcasts, right? People kind of listen to this and they go, I really like what Adam said. It's great. Like, what positions do we have open? How can we get part of the organization? Or they go, I don't like what Adam said. And I turn them off in the first 3 minutes. And then that's great too. Like, that's
Yeah.
the worst part about doing anything or writing a book is if you write it and it doesn't resonate with one, like if it's just like you're trying to hit everybody, you're going to miss the mark and it won't really resonate with anybody. I think the same thing happens in an organization. If you're trying to be everything to everybody, you're going to miss the mark. I mean, it's very clear if you go to work for Elon Musk, who you have to become and what that is, right? Like, it's very clear whether you like it, dislike it. They're not denying any of those things, right? It's more about, I know that if I go to work for Elon, that I'm going to work 80 hours a week. I can be this, like that's wonderful. By the way, Wall Street did that forever, right? Like, it's just this, I worked down on Wall Street for a while. So it's the same thing, right? So the book is just a great way of having your core values shared as part of the organization that people can come together for.
I think there's a huge lesson in there that I really hadn't thought of before, and I'll give you credit for it every single time I end up bringing it up in the future, because
And
I'm confident that I will. And that's, if you're a business owner, if you're listening to this and maybe you haven't written a book, or you wrote a book in the past and really didn't intentionally use it in your business, the way that you're able to use a book to get your culture, your content, everything out there to use almost specifically, maybe, tell me at the end of this if you think you used your book intentionally or almost accidentally to attract the right people. Like, the repelling is just kind of a natural thing of like, we have some attraction, we're gonna have some of the repelling as well. But it's almost, I would say it's a great strategy for a business leader to say, look,
absolutely.
I'm going to write this book specifically to attract the right people. That's
You're
the
right.
main purpose. If anything else happens, that's great.
Exactly.
But I don't know if anybody, would you say you did that on purpose to
Yes.
attract, or has that kind of been a side effect?
Yeah. That's exactly why I wrote the book.
That's genius. I would. Oh my! You really should write a second book specifically for the CEOs and the business owners of the power of a book to attract the right candidates
Right.
and leverage it against the low turnover and the high like lifetime value of your employees and all these things. And I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you what I wrote down as a possible title for another book that's probably not related to the business stuff. The Training Camp of Consciousness. Have you said that before, or was this the first time you said it?
Might have been the first time I've said it.
I think if I saw a book with that title, I'm buying it.
I
Or
like it. The Training
the tr-
Camp of Consciousness.
Yeah, that's all yours. I would never write that book. That's some of
Yes,
this,
we are.
what are we doing here? And it's fascinating. It can be a deep hole to go down, but I find it completely fascinating. And to me, that triggered uh, from kind of almost like an empathy view of realizing, wait a minute, other people see things differently. All the
Yes.
way, like, take that to the extreme. People are literally living in different realities, right?
Yes.
Depending on their concept of reality, they're on a different planet almost, in a sense, of what they perceive to be real, what they consider to be what they should be doing in life. And we're all coming together and trying to, what do we have in common? What are our differences? And let's all work together, because we're clearly all on the same planet, and we should not blow this planet up. Let's see what we can do as a collective species. And I know you have a hard stop coming up, so I want to make sure people know where they can find you if they want more information, as far
Yeah.
as finding your book, your companies, and the things that you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I mean, AdamHergenrother.com. I'm sure it'll be linked in your show notes, but if you just start to go spell it on Google, it'll come up, and you can go to that website, and like you'll see we have a bunch of free downloads, free resources, our podcast, our books and stuff. So if people enjoyed it, there's plenty of resources out there they can play around with.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to say, just Google me.
Yeah.
Just Google me. You'll find it. His books are on Amazon. His websites you can find, through Google, or just type them in, as well as there's plenty of podcasts available on YouTube and wherever you get your favorite podcast. So, Adam, thanks so much. This was a very enjoyable conversation. I hope that we connect again soon. And maybe I'll make you another poster one of these days.
That'd be awesome. Chris, thank you so much for all you do.
All right. Thanks, Adam. We'll talk again soon.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Authorpreneur Podcast. If you'd like more information about this episode's guest, you can find links to their books, websites, and social media profiles in the show notes and video description. If you're an author or business owner who's interested in learning more about how you can use books and published author status to market and grow your business or personal brand, or if you're an aspiring author looking for more information about the publishing process, you can find more information and request an author audit at authorpreneur.com. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you'd like to recommend someone, please reach out via email to chris@authorpreneur.com. Remember, a book is just a book, but when it's your book, it's an asset. #Authorpreneur.